Hey everyone! Today we're going to talk about something interesting: the relationship between the Parthians and the Scythians. Now, not much has been written about their connections, but when you start digging into it, you find some really interesting details. These two groups didn't just share common origins, they also teamed up militarily and likely had strong social, cultural, and trade ties as well. The Scythians were nomadic tribes who lived a rugged lifestyle, riding horses, herding animals, and traveling in covered wagons. They pop up a lot in ancient texts, and their influence stretched far and wide. From the Black Sea and Caspian Sea regions, their territory extended west into Thrace, and all the way east across Central Asia to Mongolia's Altai Mountains. Their peak lasted between the 7th and 3rd centuries BCE, but things began to change around 330 BCE. That's when the Parthians started rising to power. The Parthians, originally known as the Parni, were actually Scythians themselves. They moved south from the steppes, settling east of the Caspian Sea in Parthia, which was then under Seleucid rule. Using Scythian military strategies, they gradually took control of Parthia and eventually overthrew the Seleucid Empire, becoming the powerful Parthians we know from history. Given their shared roots and proximity, it's not surprising that the Parthians and Scythians sometimes teamed up and sometimes clashed. For example, when the Parthians needed help securing Syria from Antiochus VII, they hired the Scythians for support. But before the Scythians could act, the Parthians jumped the gun and won the battle themselves. When the Scythians later demanded payment, the Parthians refused, sparking a revolt that cost King Phraates II his life. That emboldened the Scythian tribes to defeat and kill Artabanus I shortly after. But despite these conflicts, the Scythians also came to the Parthians' aid. With their help, Sennacherib's I reclaimed the throne during a period of dynastic chaos. Later, Scythian support proved crucial when Artabanus II secured Armenia for Parthia. The Parthians also learned a lot from the Scythians when it came to warfare. The Scythians had a reputation for being fierce warriors, using a variety of weapons like battle axes, swords, shields, and bows. They relied heavily on cavalry and ambush tactics, luring enemies deep into their territory, stretching their supply lines, and then finishing them off with hit-and-run attacks. Their skill with bows and arrows shot from horseback made them nearly unbeatable for a time. In fact, this strategy is what helped them defeat Darius the Great. But after losing to Philip II and getting trapped by Alexander the Great, the Scythians never fully recovered their dominance. The Parthians took these lessons to heart, especially their cavalry tactics. They famously defeated the Romans at Carrhae in 53 BCE, using methods inspired by the Scythians. However, they simplified the Scythian approach, focusing more on cavalry and scaling back on infantry. Instead of using a wide variety of weapons, they stuck with short and long swords, lances, and bows. And while Scythian horses were quick but hard to manage, the Parthians bred larger, more manageable horses, possibly thanks to the pastures they acquired after conquering Media. One of the Parthians' standout innovations was the cataphract, a heavily armored cavalry unit. These warriors, along with their equally armored horses, wielded long lances and swords. They charged at enemy lines with such force that they could break through, creating openings for their lighter cavalry to rain down arrows. They also made improvements to the Scythian bow, developing larger, more powerful versions capable of piercing armor. Plutarch even described Parthian bows as so strong that they could tear through any defense. When it comes to governance, the Parthians and Scythians approached things differently. Both relied on tight-knit military communities, and artifacts from Scythian burial sites show soldiers bonding over rituals, treating wounds, and preparing for battle together. These traditions helped build loyalty and unity. But while Scythian loyalty was mostly to their tribes and chiefs, the Parthians took it a step further. They established a system where nobles supported a central king, creating a more organized and cohesive structure. Nobles had enough power to keep the king in check, even deposing rulers who became too tyrannical. In contrast, the Scythians had a more tribal form of governance. Herodotus mentions Scythian kings, but decisions were often made collectively by tribal chiefs. While this system fostered independence, it sometimes lacked the political unity needed for large-scale operations. The Parthians, on the other hand, avoided this issue by uniting under one king while still allowing some local autonomy. And while the Scythians were largely nomadic, they weren't entirely without permanent settlements. Ancient sources like Herodotus even described variations among them, including royal and farming Scythians. Some of these farming groups went beyond simple subsistence, engaging in trade and likely building permanent homes. In fact, in the Dnieper region near the Black Sea, Herodotus mentioned a massive agricultural area that stretched for miles, something that would have required storage facilities and infrastructure to manage crops and distribution. The Scythians' royal class, on the other hand, left behind monumental burial mounds known as kurgans. These structures weren't just tombs but showcased elaborate craftsmanship, wealth, and rituals. The remains of fortified settlements in Ukraine, such as the Belsk fortification, suggest centers of trade and crafts as well. Despite their mobility, the Scythians were capable of creating complex, organized spaces that mirrored their social hierarchy. But as the Parthians transitioned from their nomadic roots, they took architectural development to another level. Influenced by the sophisticated structures of the Greeks and Persians, they built impressive cities and fortifications. In Ctesiphon, they established troop housing that could accommodate large numbers, along with public buildings to support trade and arts. The city even served as the king's winter residence, while Ecbatana was transformed into a fortified summer retreat. The Parthians didn't just focus on functionality. They built defenses that could withstand even Roman sieges. Hatra, for example, was protected by massive walls that successfully repelled attacks from Roman emperors like Trajan and Septimius Severus. Inside, they constructed a sprawling temple complex, demonstrating both architectural skill and cultural grandeur. Similar expansions occurred in places like Merv, where state-of-the-art fortifications and towers were added. They also left their mark in Syria at Dura Europo, creating administrative centers complete with palaces, marketplaces, and even a Jewish synagogue, reflecting their multicultural approach. Their architectural innovations included vaulted entryways called iwans, which later influenced Middle Eastern designs for centuries to come. The intricate stucco patterns adorning their walls foreshadowed styles embraced by Islamic art. Turning to culture, the Scythians were known for their rich artistic expression, often showcased in burial goods. Excavations near the Black Sea reveal highly detailed artifacts like golden combs depicting warriors, and pectorals showing scenes from daily life. These works reflected both realism and abstract interpretations, animals, predators, and mythical creatures crafted with remarkable detail. Music and dance also played a big role in Scythian life. Archaeological finds include instruments like lyres, panpipes, drums, and even harps, hinting at a vibrant musical culture. Such discoveries paint a picture of a society that balanced warlike traditions with artistic refinement. The Parthians, while influenced by Greek art due to their conquest of the Seleucid Empire, retained some Scythian influences. They adapted the Scythian style of tunics and trousers but added their own flair, pleated and balloon trousers for nobles, paired with embroidered designs and decorative buttons. Hairstyles and beards were also distinct, often styled to complement their elaborate clothing. In art, however, the Parthians struggled to match the realism of the Scythians or Greeks. And like many ancient cultures, the Scythians deeply revered natural elements, shaping their beliefs around the vast steppe landscape they inhabited. The endless sky stretching to meet the horizon and the ever-present sun likely left a profound impression on their worldview. Fire, too, played a crucial role, not just for survival against predators and in daily tasks like cooking and metalwork, but also as a powerful symbol of protection and transformation. For both Scythians and Parthians, these elements, earth, sky, sun, and fire, held immense spiritual significance. Herodotus recorded that the Scythians worshipped 8 deities. Among them were Hestia and Zeus, whom they called Tabitha and Papias, as well as Api, symbolizing Mother Earth, Gatosiris, akin to Apollo, and Argampasa, representing Aphrodite. Although Herodotus described their pantheon using Greek equivalents, he noted that the Scythians had no statues, altars, or temples. Barry Cunliffe reinforces this, explaining that their upper deities were likely not depicted in human form, and no definitive images of them have been identified. This suggests that early Parthian religion likely mirrored Scythian practices, focusing on elemental worship rather than anthropomorphic representations. Over time, as the Parthians interacted with other civilizations, their religious practices evolved. They encountered Zoroastrianism, the dominant faith of the Persian Empire, and the worship of Mithra, a god associated with light, truth, and warfare. While maintaining respect for Persian and Greek traditions, the Parthians eventually gravitated toward Mithraism. This choice allowed them to preserve ties to their Scythian roots while simultaneously creating a distinct identity separate from both Greek and Persian influences. Mithra embodied qualities valued by the Parthians: strength, honor, and horsemanship, making him an ideal figure to unify their beliefs. Ultimately, despite cultural shifts, the Parthians never completely abandoned their heritage. Their connection to Scythian traditions persisted in subtle ways, from religious practices to fashion and military tactics. While their architecture and governance adapted to suit their expanding empire, the resilience and adaptability they inherited from the Scythians remained at the core of their identity. Even as they established cities and built monumental structures, they carried forward the legacy of their nomadic ancestors, blending old traditions with new ideas to sustain their empire for nearly 5 centuries.